who's Kurt on the,
We have Charles Schneider and Jack Wilson.
okay. Then we'll stand for the pledge to the flag and the invocation. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bow our heads for a moment, please. Heavenly Father, we thank you for us to be able to be joined here tonight to serve each other and serve serve people. And pray that you would be with Mr. Sullivan's family, passing up to them and what they need you. We pray that you would be with us all, Lord, and this community and this state, everyone, in the way that they need you through this pandemic, and help us to get back to normalcy. Probably toward the military and law enforcement, protect them and watch over them and their families. Holy name, we pray these.
If we could, I'd like to observe 1 minute of silence for Robert Sullivan, who was passed away recently. He'd been a member of this board for a good long period of time. Yep. Died about 2 months ago. And I read his obituary. I knew he was an impressive fellow. Having read his obituary, he was a public servant his whole life through. He was active in the military, and he was a wise and fair voice on this board, and we'll miss him. So, 1 moment. All right, and now we'll resume our live. Mr. Rose, you're going to make an announcement, I think, about how this technology is going to work in coordination with the reality in this room.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Who else is online, John?
Oh, Harrison's here now.
Snyder and Harrison.
All right, good evening, everyone. Due to the COVID-19 protocols in place, we've had to enable Zoom for online participation in our meetings. As such, there are a few things that need to be addressed. Board members, it is very important that only one person speaks at a time in order for the audience on Zoom to be able to know who is speaking and what is being said. If more than one person speaks, then the audio may become garbled online. To avoid this, the chairman will call out the next person to speak. Please raise your hand to let the chairman know if you wish to speak. For any board members on Zoom, you may also raise your hand on Zoom, or if you are calling in by phone, you can push *9 to raise your hand in Zoom. We understand there may be some question and answer times during the meeting. Just please be aware that only one person should speak at a time. Respondents, those of you who have a case being heard, or if you are speaking on behalf of such a person. If you are attending via Zoom, when your case is called, please raise your hand in Zoom or in person so we know you wish to speak. When your turn comes to speak, the chairman will call you and can call your name as shown on Zoom. Public comments. When the time comes in each case for public comments, the chairman will call for them. At this time, any persons physically here or on Zoom must raise their hand and wait for the chairman to call them to speak. All public comments will have 3 minutes. Everyone, please be courteous to everyone and silence all your electronic devices in the building. For those of you attending on Zoom, if you experience any type of feedback, please be sure the device you are using to hear and the device you are using to listen to are separated. For an example, if you are using your computer speakers to listen and your microphone to speak, please keep them separated to avoid any unnecessary feedback. If you're experiencing any volume issues through Zoom, please be sure your volume on Zoom is turned up as well as a speaker volume for your speakers. All persons speaking in person, please speak into the microphone so everyone can hear you. For anyone speaking through Zoom, please be sure to state your name and spell your last name for the record. And lastly, board members, voting. All voting will be conducted by a roll call vote to make it easier to understand who's saying what and when. Chairman will call on each person to cast your vote. At all other times, of course, please remember to raise your hand and wait for the chairman to call you. We thank you for your patience and understanding through this difficult time. And one last point of order, the administration for Walton County has decided that any fines accruing after the state order of March 9th will stop. We will not accrue fines on cases from March 9th through the emergency order. This is just a courtesy to all those out there during this difficult time. So we just got that information this afternoon, so we are trying to recalculate all fines and fees as our cases come up. So please bear with us if we have to make some emergency calculations. Any questions? All right, thank you, gentlemen.
None? All right, we'll go ahead then with the first case.
I'm sorry, you need to approve the minutes
Oh, sorry.
from February.
Have we all had a chance to read the minutes? If we have any additions or corrections or a motion to accept them as written?
I make a motion to accept.
When you make a motion, say your name first. So that the
Okay.
record
Do I have to
can-
turn this on?
It's on.
You're on, Gordon.
Check. I make a motion, we accept them. My name is Gordon Porter, Gordon Porter.
Anyone second?
Second.
And John, tell them who you are.
John Harrison, second.
All those in favor? I guess I got to do this individually?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. Well, you two guys made the motion and seconded, so nope, got to ask still. All right, Gordon,
Yes.
John, Victor,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
and online, Charles?
He motioned yes. We can't hear him for some reason. He's going to have to call in.
Okay. So the minutes are approved as,
Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Wilson, thumbs up.
oh, he's here too. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, he's the bottom.
Okay, then the minutes are approved as written. All right, now we can go on to the first case, 18-001-332.
We'll need to swear in those who are here.
Yeah, this is going to be a problem. If there's anyone online who needs to be sworn on in.
We're
yeah.
going to handle those individually as they come.
Okay,
Anyone who is going to present testimony, please stand. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this board?
I do, yes.
For anyone who is online, when your case comes forward, for anyone who is online who will be presenting testimony, when your case comes forward, I will swear you individually at that time. Thank you.
Mr. Rose.
All right, good evening, gentlemen. This is case 18-1332. My name is Officer Kurt Rose, Walton County Code Enforcement. This is Bobby Ray Bohannon and Marta Bohannon at 515 Peacock Road. This is going to be a foreclosure request for foreclosure of an administrative lien. Next slide, please. If you remember back on 9/20 of 2018, the first hearing we had with this is a picture from back then. There was a final order issued at that time. On 12/26, after the time had elapsed, an affidavit of noncompliance was issued. Next slide, please. On 9/19 of 2019, a second hearing with an order imposing fines and fees and administrative lien was issued. It was a $200 fine plus $10 per day. Current fines due on the property are $1,920. Next slide, please. Let's see. Kind of a history of this parcel. Back in 2015, there was a case that ran from March to May, which was a junk and debris. In 2016, there was another case of junk and debris and dilapidated structure that ran from July to December. The following May, another junk and debris case that ran from May to July. In that one, they were able to put up fencing to try to block some of the junk and debris. And then in 2018, in April of 2018, this current case came about. There's been multiple cases that have only been months apart over the span of multiple years on this parcel. The picture shown there is the posting of the notice of hearing for this hearing. Next photo, please. The notice of hearing signature card came back, signed by Marta Bohannon. That is the copy of the notice of hearing. Next slide, please. Some surrounding properties to give you guys some understanding of what's around it. Right across the street is a residential house, and then also there is the Tri-State Christian Camp. It's right across the street, one of their entrances to that as well. Next slide, please. Let's see. As of today, as I said earlier, the current fines total $1,920. The current land value on the property is $6,500. Next slide. As of yesterday, the current conditions were as such. They had cleaned up a lot of the junk and debris, and there's still some things there that still needed to be cleaned up. Next slide. The house is still pretty dilapidated shape. The windows have been broken out for well over a year and a half now, and water's been getting inside of it. It's just kind of falling apart. Next slide. To kind of make matters worse, one of the owners allowed a tenant to move onto the property. They dragged a shed onto the property and decided to start living in it, and have proceeded to bring in more junk and debris onto the property around it, which is against the code in general. Next slide, please. This is kind of an overview, so you can see the junk and debris, the shed there that's not there illegally, the mobile homes off in the distance. They did remove, like I said, a lot of the junk and debris. There was an RV that was still on the property, but as of yesterday, they had gotten it removed. So they had actually contacted me over this past weekend, because they said they were out there cleaning it up to get it all done before this hearing. So this past weekend, they made a big push to try to get it cleaned up and done. I gave them, as much time as we could, but remember, this case has been going on for 2 years. So next slide, please. My recommendation is to request the county attorney's office to proceed with foreclosures of the code enforcement lien or any other means of abatement as allowed by law. That would be my recommendation, that the board approve. The next slide. These slides this is evidence that is going to be presented by the owner, Marta Bohannon. These were photos she took as of today before she came here. They were apparently working on it more today to try to get the property cleaned up even more. But I'll let her speak to that. And I'll leave those pictures up for you guys to view while she talks. Do you have any other questions for me?
Anyone have questions?
Is the shed still there?
That's Victor Bowman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, Victor Bowman.
I'm sorry?
Is the shed still there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Dave Lovell, just to be clear, they are still in violation.
That is correct.
I, the chairman, Tom Stein, do they have unpaid property tax as well? Do you know?
That I don't know.
Anybody else? Fellas online?
No.
Okay, then we'll accept Mr. Rosa's evidence and testimony into evidence, and there's-
Testimony and PowerPoint.
Gotcha, testimony and PowerPoint into evidence. And Mrs. Bohannon is here to speak to us? Yes. Would you please come forward?
On it.
Okay, you were sworn in, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, would you tell us?
Son and daughter-in-law live there, just to pay the payments on the
Before you do,
Trailer.
say your name and your address,
Oh,
please. to
Marta
identify-
Bohannon, and it's 515 Peacock Road in Defuniak Springs. I didn't know all this was going on. A lot of it. When I got back here last week, I gave the man that moved the shed on there, I told him he had to go. So he is actually getting it out of there. The trailer's gonna be removed. There was a couple people that contacted me today about them wanting it, and I told them it had to get out of there. If not, if everything goes right today, I'm gonna move a new trailer out there, and I'm moving into it. It will not never be like this again. 'Cause they're not having nothing to do with it no more. I have took it back over. And the property taxes, I owe 2 years on it, and I'm working on doing that. They had 4 due, I paid 2, and I got 2 more due. I don't know what else.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Bohannon?
Victor Bowman, over the years, with this particular piece of property coming before the board, are you saying you just now found out that this has been going on?
The one from 18,
Okay.
I didn't know. I found out September. My daughter-in-law, I reckon, come to a meeting that was here. I didn't know anything about.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
What are the options we have? I mean, is there options or
That's Gordon Porter.
Gordon Porter, yeah?
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get done with Ms.
Okay.
Bohannon.
That's fine.
That's all I know is that I'm trying to get it done the best I can. It's just me, I'm working on it hard.
And I, Tom Stein, how long do you think it'd take you to clean it up?
Well, as soon as that man gets that shed out of there, and as soon as I can get the paperwork up to the trailer place, that place will be gone.
You
All right,
realize you can't move another trailer in until you get a permit.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, but at least I'm trying to get it out of there and get it done.
So that the property would be as if it were vacant.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And how long?
I'm hoping the people that contact me will come get it within the next few days, I'm hoping. And as soon as the man can, I reckon, find somewhere to go, that's what he's doing. He's getting it out of there, because I told him he had to go.
The guy in the shed you're talking about?
I didn't know that was done.
Okay, okay, thank you.
I'm working as hard as I can on it.
Okay, we'll close the public part of the hearing. Yeah, yes, ma'am? Yeah, you can come up, tell us who you are.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, my name's Elisa Schiffner. I live on Peacock Road. I wrote this letter. Kurt asked us all of our neighbors on the street have written letters regarding this property. It's been going on, how long? 20, you would say? I've been there 12 years. She's been there 20 years.
Wait,
Yeah.
wait, we'll give you a turn in just a minute, but you tell
Okay.
us first, okay?
Can I read my letter?
Yes, you may.
Thanks. I have been in contact with code enforcement diligently for the past 12 years about the deplorable conditions that 515 Peacock Road has been in. It is not just an eyesore, but a health hazard as well. From the time I have moved to Peacock Road in 2007, there has been at least 20 different people and families that have moved into that address. At times, there was so much garbage and debris, it was spilling onto the street. At which time I would notify code enforcement, they would notify the residents to come into compliance, and the residents would get a tractor, dig a giant hole, and throw everything into the hole and bury it. Not just garbage, but broken ovens and grills and air conditioners, propane tanks, lawnmowers, and other items that have no business being buried in the ground. There was a fire in one of the scummy trailers one day, and I had to stop and tell the fire department to be careful because I was afraid the entire neighborhood was going to blow up. The cycle still continues. Every time code enforcement tells them to clean up, they dig a hole, they throw the trash into the hole. There was not one resident who lived there over the period of 12 years that actually cleaned the place up. They just buried it. There's been 6 different structures on that property, each one worse than the previous one, and each tenant worse than the one before. Right now, there's 2 broken down trailers, an 8 by 10 foot shed a man is living in. I don't think there's water or septic hookup since we see him peeing in the yard when we drive by sometimes. He did have a generator running his shed before he took it upon himself to hook up to the electric transformer, which we notified Chelco of. Over the years, that property has housed felons, drug dealers, and every kind of bad element you ever want roaming your neighborhood. Bob and Nancy Adamson, who live across the street and have to look at this mess every day, have had their property broken into on several occasions by the people who move into that property. One time, Bob, who was 84 years old at the time, actually caught the man breaking into his house, held him at gunpoint until the police got there. Bob retired here for a better life and some peace, and he had to be subjected to this madness every day until he recently passed away. And the sad thing is that he never got a day of rest because he was always worrying about the people across the street. This property affects everybody on Peacock Road and all of Walton County. By allowing this blatant disregard for the code enforcement rules, you are saying to everybody, come to Walton County, live like pigs, and have no respect for anybody here. It's embarrassing for everybody who lives on this road to have people come to visit and drive by this hideous shanty town of trailers and garbage and mayhem. It's frustrating for all of us who have complained and called every county office for varying offenses they have committed and getting no help. I have been informed by Jennifer at Code Enforcement, who I deal with all the time, that they have been fined $250 a day since February 2019. And by that total, my calculations come up to about $112,000. That's what I had been told. Yet nothing has been done. No money has been collected. The owner of these property does not care about it or what it does to the
Ma'am,
community.
I'm going to have to cut you off there, but you've made a pretty strong case, okay?
Okay,
Thank
well-
you. And the other lady, do you want to speak to us? Can she take her time? Yeah. Hey, if you want to finish and she doesn't want to speak, you could do that.
Ma'am, would you like to submit the letter for the record?
Yeah, I already have it as a copy of it in with the evidence packet.
And did I accept it into evidence
Yes.
then already? Yeah.
My name is Barbara Wallace. I live on 834 Peacock Road, and she pretty much covered everything in her letter, but behind, they have put batteries. They've buried batteries and things. I've lived there for 30 years now, and it's never changed. It's been that bad. And when they had the fire in the other trailer, there was 10 children there. And luckily, they all were out of the trailer at the time that it burnt. So now that you see the pictures and you hear what we have to say, the gentleman that was living that built the shack that she said is moving, we just drove by him and he was sitting on the porch laughing. So if he's moving, I don't know how he's moving because he hasn't moved one thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to us? If not, I'll close the public part of the hearing and we'll discuss this amongst ourselves. I don't think so, does she? Ms. Bohannon, do you want to address us after what you've heard?
Only one tenant that lived there that my son let move in there.
Ma'am,
That was not family.
move closer to the microphone. Thank you.
Other than that, like I said, the man's moving. I can't give you a time frame because I don't know. The trailer is bad, don't get me wrong. It is bad. And I lived there for a long time, so I know it was cleaned up. It wasn't like that. I mean, I'm working on it as hard as I can. I don't know what else more to do or to apologize to these people for it being this way. That's all I can do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody got anything to say about this? Yes, Mr. Rose.
I do have one thing to add. This for your board, for you to remember, this is a foreclosure request. You're going to have three options in this. You can either accept my request to move forward with foreclosure, you can deny my request, or if the board so chooses, you cannot add additional time, whatever, you could continue this to another hearing date. Those are the only three choices you will have. You will not be able to say you got another 30 days to clean it up, or you can add an additional 60 days to do whatever. It can't work that way. That would be a whole new final order, and we're well beyond that point. So you either accept, deny, or continue this to another hearing.
Okay. That's pretty black and white. Yeah, yes. Okay, so the public part of the hearing is closed, and we will come up with something. Anybody got anything to say or make a motion?
My immediate concern.
John Harrison.
John Harrison, my immediate concerns are the toxic waste. You've got a water system under there. Some way, can we get somebody to find out the extent of that damage?
That's not the subject for this hearing, John.
If the county if this foreclosure goes, it becomes the county's property and the county's problem.
The county could be
Once the
inheriting a toxic
foreclosure is
waste.
completed.
Yes.
Right about that.
John Harrison, the county could be inheriting a toxic waste site. That's expensive.
Probably wind up with it anyway, John, one way or the other, but they would get that. I think it's been going on too long and too much aggravation. If it's been there 20 years, and Gordon Porter, I think it's been going on too long myself.
Anybody else? How about a motion?
I was just gonna say, I don't see where we have any choice either.
Dave Lovell?
Dave Lovell, yeah, I do not see where we have any choice either. I agree with Gordon.
Then I'm
This
going
is
to call.
Jack Wilson.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jack.
I just wanted to make sure you could hear me.
Yep. You have,
Is that a yes?
yes, that, we can
Okay.
hear you, yes.
Victor Bowman?
I don't have,
Go ahead, Jack, you going to say something?
nothing to add, really.
Okay. Victor,
Make a motion, we accept the officer's recommendation for foreclosure.
second?
I'll second it, Dave Lovell.
And
Okay.
before you vote, understand that this still goes before the VCC
Right.
for approval for foreclosure before it's,
They take our recommendation and
Yes.
do what they want?
yes, sir.
Okay. So I'll call the roll. I'll do it of those members present first. Mr. Harrison?
Eh,
Nay. Mr. Porter?
Yay.
Mr. Lovell?
Yay.
Mr. Bowman?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
And Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Okay, then the motion carries. And so be it. Yep.
County Attorney's Office will then present it to the Board of County Commissioners from here.
Okay.
Correct.
Will she be notified when they do that? I'm sure that she will.
Yes, sir, she'll be notified.
Okay.
Okay. If
She'll
you
give-
tell Jennifer what you're at, the correct address, that would be useful. Okay, the second case, I'm going to have to recuse myself, so David, it's going to be you. And I'll be back after that one.
Okay.
had a few of those.
Vice Chairman Dave Lovell, I now have the gavel. So we are going to continue on to case number 2, that being case number 19, or the second case, case number 19-4721. Property owner, Mr. Alan Stratton. This is a non-compliance matter, so I'll turn it over to Officer Lynch at this point.
Good evening, Board. Code Enforcement Officer Michael Lynch. For the record, I'm presenting this presentation involving the noncompliance and an order imposing fines presentation. This is case 19-004721. The original complaint was in reference to junk and debris and building without permits. This is Lot 8, Block I, Eden Estate, Parcel 352 South, 2499000I0080 and is the property of Mr. Alan Stratton. If you recall, this property is north of Chat Holly and off of the bay and one of the waterways. This involved a tiny house that was being constructed. Now the junk and debris has been removed. The tiny house remains. And when this case was presented at the October 17th Code Enforcement Board, the property was found in violation as far as junk and debris and building without permits. The Code Enforcement Board required the property to be brought into compliance in 60 days, which would have been December 17th, or a daily fine of $250 would be assessed until it was brought into compliance. On December 11th of 19, an inspection showed that the junk and debris had been removed. So that portion of the violation had been resolved. On December 19th of 19, the Code Enforcement Board granted Mr. Stratton an additional 60-day extension, which takes it up to February 19th of 2020, since he has been making progress. On February 20th of this year, Mr. Stratton had plans that were nearing approval by the Planning and Development Office. And then on the February 28th, I had prepared and sent a notice of hearing via certified mail for what would have been the March 19th hearing. On March 17th, I contacted the property owner via phone and advised him of the change in date of the Code Enforcement Board to this date, May 21st, due to the COVID-19 protocols. On March 19th, I prepared and sent a new notice of hearing via certified mail. On May 5th, I had to send another notice of hearing, this one with the COVID advisory via certified mail. And then on May 11th, the notice of hearing was delivered by the Postal Service. This was the final order that the board had imposed, stating that the property owner had 60 days or a $250 fine a day. This was the affidavit of noncompliance that was filed after the deadline had expired. The notice of hearing that was sent, the initial notice of hearing, and the tracking with that, and yet another notice of hearing with the COVID-19, with the tracking for that showing delivery. And then finally, I'd ask that you find that the property remains in violation, that the proper notice has been given to the hearing and was given to the respondent. I need to amend this final because, as we learned, the county would like to suspend or stay any fines that accrued after March 9th. A fine accrued, the corrected amount is $4,250, which ran from February 19th until March 9th. We'd ask that that fine be assessed and $250 a day once the county lifts its emergency, state of emergency. At this time, I'd ask that you accept my testimony and presentation into the record.
Actually, it's Mr. Lovelace.
No, I'll accept Officer Lynch's testimony and findings and recommendations. Okay. This is a non-compliance hearing. Refresh my memory, we're not hearing new evidence, correct? Okay, so, but do we still allow the respondent a chance to? Okay.
And Mr. Stratton is here.
Mr. Stratton is here. All right, so does anyone have any questions for Officer Lynch before I call Mr. Stratton to the podium?
If I may, Victor Bowman, question, the 4250 is through today?
No, sir, that was from February 19th, the date of the original deadline, up until March 9th. That's the date where the county has said that they would like us to
Understand.
stop any fines.
Okay, so the 250 you mentioned would start when?
On the date that
When the
was
county
lifted.
lifts? Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
No,
thank
we
you.
don't know the date yet,
Thank you.
I think.
It would resent, if your motion.
I have a question, again, Dave Lovell. When Mr. Stratton came before this board the second time, was that just to request an extension, or was that actually a noncompliance hearing also?
No, that was to request an extension, and because
what I
Mr.
thought.
Stratton had shown good progress in removing the junk and debris, we supported that. All we're looking for is compliance.
So at this point, the violation that persists is the existence of the building there? Is that
Yes,
the
sir,
primary?
and
or all-
I'll let
or all?
Mr. Stratton speak to where he is in the process. He is making progress, but it still remains in violation. The building
So,
permit's not been
The
issued.
building permit has not, okay, that's what I thought I remembered. Okay, anyone else have questions for Officer Lynch? All right. Mr. Stratton, would you like to come forward and enlighten us on anything?
My defense, I would just,
State your name
Strat- yeah.
for the record,
my
please.
name's Alan Stratton, that I've gone through the process with the planning department, which took a long time because the engineer was very slow. And, but today I paid the $10,000 impact fee for the water company, and I paid the impact fee for the fire company a couple weeks ago. So I'm ready to submit the plans to the building department. And it should be very quick after I do that. And the other thing is the tiny home was something I built and I moved in there. I didn't build it on the lot. In fact, the original complaint, in the complaint, it says that I moved it, that it was pre-made and I moved it in there. And I spent a lot of time getting a permit for the shipping container, which I was using for storing tools that I was planning to use to build a house. And I've designed a house for the lot. The original plan was the tiny home was just going to be like an RV that I would live in while I built the house. But I was informed it had to be put on a permanent foundation. So I went through the engineer, which, I mean, it's just a simple tiny home that will have concrete piers, but it took months to get him to do it. And I had to go through the same process because Billy Bearden, at a certain point in the process, said, well, I'm not going to approve the tiny home until you get the shipping container approved or moved. So then I went back to the engineer and I got the shipping container, just 4 concrete piers, and it has like a pole barn coming off it. I had him draw up that, and that took, another couple months for them to do that, the engineer. And I didn't realize that the shipping container, when I put it on the lot, actually, my brother-in-law gave it to me and he put it on the lot. I didn't realize that was going to be a violation, a serious violation. But the problem that was holding me back the whole time was the cost of the impact fee for water and sewer. It was a lot of money, $10,000, $9,500. Otherwise, if that and the engineer taking a long time is what has made it take a long time to do. I did clean up the junk and debris, and he came by. The original code enforcement officer inspected the lot and said it was okay. And it's actually,
Except for the shipping containers still there and the, correct, plus the building still being unpermitted.
well, I was not able to, I would have, the water company, my sister was going to put it on a credit card a few weeks ago, and they would not accept the credit card payment, so I had to wait till I could get.
No, no,
the
I'm asking
cash together.
specifically about the
I could not
shipping
get-
container.
One
Well,
at a
it's
time,
all in the
please.
same permit. It's all in the same permit application. The Billy Bearden, the building inspector said he wanted it all done together. The blueprints for the foundation, since it's in a flood zone of the shipping container and the tiny home, had to be submitted at the same time. But I couldn't submit anything until I paid the water and sewer. And that's what has been holding the whole thing up. It was the lack of money for the water and sewer. But I did, I got that paid today. And I have I sent Mr. Lynch a photo of the blue, they call it the blue sheet, which is the proof of payment of the water and sewer.
Can I, right, or is there anything
Oh,
else?
I'm
that
ready
you
to
think-
go to the building department in
Did-
Defuniak.
Okay,
And-
let me ask you something. Did you ever ask Code Enforcement Officer Lynch or anyone else for an additional extension like you did previously? Knowing that this deadline was coming
Well,
up?
the last time I appeared was before the meeting that was canceled. And it was like, it seemed like they were going to just give me more time, and I didn't even have to ask. They didn't even ask me to speak. They just said he submitted all his paper. I had submitted everything to planning at that point, and planning was, my paperwork was into the planning department.
Okay,
and-
I understand, I understand, I
Give
hear
me-
that, but
So
as,
I thought they were going to give me as much time as I needed.
no,
because
it
they
was
didn't
pretty, it was
even-
pretty clear previously,
just-
you had a 60-day extension previously, that was it. This is a non-compliance hearing now, which you have gotten adequate notice of. So my question again is restated, is why would you have not gone to code enforcement to request another extension?
Well, I thought you just had hearings every month. I mean, I thought you were the ones that did the extension. I didn't know I could get an extension by going to the code enforcement office.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I should have realized that that they were gonna, I was surprised when he gave me this today, they was gonna fine me $25,000 and $250 a day. I didn't know there was a fine accruing on the lot, because I was dealing with the code enforcement, and I let Mr. Lynch know that I was having trouble with the impact fee, and I thought I was gonna have to pay it in the next couple of weeks, but the money came through. I was able to pay it today. But I think that, I mean.
Okay, let me stop you there, Mr. Stratton. I think we've got a pretty clear picture of your side of it.
I'm
but
ready to
I'd
go
I'd
to-
like to ask Officer Lynch a question, if I could, as to whether or not Mr. Stratton stating he had no idea of a fine accruing. Is there any reason why he would not have? I think I saw the sequence of notices that were sent out to him. Isn't that correct? Timeline?
Yes, sir. We did have the hearing where the final order would have been sent to Mr. Stratton as well, that showed the deadline dates. And when he came in and got the 60-day extension, that also had a deadline, and that deadline was February 19th. I've talked to Mr. Stratton, I don't know how frequently over the months, and trying to encourage him to keep things moving. I knew he was in the process, but no, I can't speak to what he understood or knew.
Well, the last the last one, I remember Mr. Lynch mentioning a fine. He said, I hope you can get the building permit before this meeting, because I don't want to have to fine you. That's what he said to me. So I thought I had until this I wasn't going to be fined. You know, if I had gotten the building permit yesterday, according to what he said, there would be no $240 a day fine, I guess. But I didn't, you know what I mean? He said, if you get the building permit before the hearing, he acted like there would be no fine.
No, the situation would be if you had gotten the building permit and otherwise come into compliance before the deadline of your extension, there would be no fine.
Well, no, that's not what he said. He was talking about this hearing.
Well, am I incorrect?
What I was trying to relate to Mr. Stratton is if he was able to get his permits before the date of this hearing, I could file an affidavit of compliance, if you remember me telling you that?
Right.
And which at that time would have stopped the fining process. If he had had that, I think would have been in a better position coming before this board today to ask for either a reduction or, you know, some other point. But unfortunately, it's not through that process yet.
All right, I think, does anyone have any questions? Any other board members have any questions of Mr. Stratton? All right.
Any other public?
Well, I was going to,
I mean, can I just say one thing, that I'm going to go to whatever way if this goes, I'm going to go continue to try to get a building permit.
yes, sir.
And there's going to be some back and forth with the building department, I'm sure. It's not like I'm going to go in there and they're going to give me the permit right away. So I think that if I'm in there applying, I've got the blue receipt for the water and sewer today. If I can go up there tomorrow and give them all the plans that I paid for and all the survey and the fire.
Right.
impact.
In other words, apply for the application, or make the application.
Is it gonna cost me $250 a day while I'm dealing with the?
Well, at this point in time, the clock on that's been told because of the COVID-19 situation. So you've got at least a grace period on your fine accruals until they lift this emergency order. Do you understand the statements that were made in that regard previously? So no fine is currently accruing because of COVID-19 only. Not by any virtue of the fact anything you've done, but just because of situation beyond all our control. So I'm going to ask at this point if there are any comments or questions from the public.
From the public, okay.
Did you need
I was just going to ask you.
Okay, Gordon Porter.
The fine that's there now it's still in place. What they're talking about wouldn't be any additional fines until this COVID thing is over. But the original fine is still there. The officer's not telling you that that's not there.
Right.
Right, but there's no fine on junk and debris, right?
So that's cleaned up. Well,
Okay,
the fine was on the whole property.
So the fine is in
situation.
getting the permit for the tiny home.
The fine was in coming into compliance, not coming into compliance. There was multiple infractions, junk and debris, not having a permit, and maybe one or two others, I don't recall. But the fine was an all-inclusive fine, as I believe that was the case, right? It wasn't multiple violations, was it?
You're correct, sir.
Okay. So the fine at this point is $4,250, which accrued between February 19th and March 9th. March 9th. So approximately whatever that is, less than a month. But that is not accruing at this point. So Do you understand what I'm saying, or what we're saying there, and what Mr. Porter had said? That you're not being fined on a per-day basis at this point until the executive or the emergency order is lifted. You understand that?
Yeah.
Okay,
that's-
right.
And when is the emergency?
We
order
don't
gonna
know.
be?
That's up to the governor and
My only,
Hey.
what I didn't quite understand is I thought that if I was being given time to go through the slow process of getting engineering done and going through the planning department, that I was just given that time and I wasn't going to be fined.
No, sir, that's not
Headline.
the case. That's not the way it works. You were given a 60-day extension that expired on February 19th of this year. At that point, fines started to accrue. And I'm sorry you didn't know that. I'll take you at your word that you didn't, but that's how it's transpired.
And the original order was October 18th, 2019. So that date, and then he was given an additional.
Right, October, what day?
October 18th of 2000.
Okay, that's right, because you were given 60 days originally and then another 60-day extension. Right? So I guess in retrospect, I would suggest that you'd gone back and requested a third one, but, or some other means of abatement. Since typically, well, I'm not gonna go any further on that. I mean, you have been
Right, but
obviously making progress.
The time that the engineer took is something that's not in my control.
Well, I understand, but you hired the engineer. The engineer works for you, so he
Can I
doesn't
make a
work for
suggestion?
us. He doesn't work for code enforcement.
Can I
Mr.
make a
Porter.
suggestion?
Yeah. Well,
I suggest we go ahead and do it, and then you come back and I'd be in favor of.
let's wait. Let's hold that till
Okay.
till our discussion. So, okay, thank you, Mr. Stratton, and I've already asked for public comments. Hearing none, I'll close. Did you want to? Okay. I'll close the floor to any further comments, and we'll discuss it amongst ourselves. All right, Gordon, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna suggest that we go ahead and do the non-compliance, and then, when he gets there, it'll encourage him to go ahead and get it done, and he can come back for a reduction in the fine, and I'd be in favor of that if he does what he says he's gonna do. But that would be up to the board too, and be up to just me.
If you hadn't have said that, I would.
Okay.
Yes, I agree.
I agree with John Harrison, I agree with Gordon Porter.
I think that's what Victor Bowman, I think that's what the code officer was implying. If he had got his building permit before this meeting,
Yeah.
that would have been a different situation, so.
Right.
But I second the motion.
So, somebody restate your
I
motion.
make the motion that we do that we go ahead with the non-compliance, and then suggest to him that I don't guess it needs to be in the motion, but suggest to him that he come back for,
Well, he'll figure that
fine.
out.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so you're moving that we accept Officer Lynch's recommendation.
And I
at
second
this point.
that.
And, all right,
Victor Bowman.
Gordon Porter made the motion, Victor Bowman seconded it. Mr. Wilson or our Zoom members, or anybody have any comments up there? Questions?
Nope, they're both saying they're good.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. Mr. Harrison, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Porter, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Lovell, I vote yes.
Victor Bowman, yes.
Mr. Bowman, yes. Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
and Mr. Schneider, excuse me.
Yes.
Thumbs up. All right, we have all yeses, so the motion passes. All right, so Mr. Stratton, do you understand what we just, we are voting to impose the fine of $4,250, I believe it was. I would encourage you to continue on your course of coming into compliance, and then possibly going back to code enforcement to see if there's some form of, remedy we can come to at a future hearing. Come forward if you've got any questions. I can't hear you very well.
Oh, no, I'm not being fined.
Not right now, no, sir.
All right, I have no question.
But you will be once the governor lifts his,
Listed, is it going to be
It'll start ticking again, $250 a day.
I'm not being charged at 250.
Yes, sir, you will be until you come into compliance.
Right, but not for this period of time.
Right.
Not for today or until the governor lifts this emergency order, correct?
And Gordon Porter here, the faster you get in compliance is going to determine how we vote on helping your reduction too, I imagine.
Okay, on to case number 3, and I assume Chairman Stein will want his seat back, or his hammer back.
Don't let him have that hammer.
Time at the helm. Okay. Wrap the gavel.
Thanks, Dave. All right, this will be the third case in front of us, 19005161.
Yes, sir. Again,
Lynch.
Code Enforcement Officer Michael Lynch, for the record, I'm going to be presenting this PowerPoint and testimony. This is a non-compliance hearing and order imposing fines. This original case was clearing without permits and the Bay Shore Protection Zone. This is Lot 4, Block C, Driftwood Point Road, Parcel 11 to South, 2142010, 00C0040. The property is owned by Donald and Ellen Adkins. This property is located up in the Driftwood Point area off of Mac Bayou. It is a Bayshore front property. And if you recall, when the first case was brought to us, this was Officer Curtis Knapp's case. And this is the parcel that was cleared. On the Bayshore Protection Zone, again, we've got that 50-foot buffer that's not supposed to be cleared, and there was some clearing in that area. As far as a summary, this case was presented back on December 19th of 19, where the property was found to be in violation. There was clearing without permits and clearing of the Bayshore Protection Zone. The Code Enforcement Board required that the property be brought into compliance within 60 days, which would have been, again, February 19th of this year, or a daily fine of $250 would be assessed until brought into compliance. On February 19th of this year, the property owner submitted a restoration plan for a less than minor development, which was 20-000004. On February 25th, the application was found to be incomplete. On February 28th, a notice of hearing was sent to the property owner for the March 19th, 2020 Code Enforcement Board hearing. And then on March 13th of this year, I received the unsigned return notice of hearing that was sent. On March 17th, I contacted the property owner via telephone and advised him of the change in date of the Code Enforcement Board to this date, May 21st, due to the COVID-19 precautions. On March 19th, I prepared and sent a new notice of hearing via certified mail. And then on May the 5th, I prepared and sent a new notice with the COVID-19 advisory via certified mail. On May the 8th, the notice of hearing was delivered by the Postal Service, and as of today's date, the restoration has still not been completed. This was the final order that was issued that showed that the deadline was February 19th, and a fine of $250 a day would be assessed after that date. This was the affidavit of noncompliance that I had filed, and I have a series of notice hearings that were mailings and returns. This was the latest notice of hearing due to the COVID-19 protocols and the tracking. And finally, I'd ask that you please find that this property remains in violation. Please find that the proper notice of the hearing was given to the respondent. And again, like before, this is the exact same amount. They were same days, same deadlines, same fine schedule. So This has been reduced from $23,000 to $4,250 as of March 9th, and would ask that the fine continue whenever they do lift the order back to $250 a day. And I'd ask that you accept my testimony and presentation into the record.
I will accept it. And questions for Mr. Lynch?
I just want
Mr.
to make,
Bowman.
Victor Bowman, the photograph you showed is what it looks like today?
It's starting to, weeds and grasses, I mean, it is starting to grow back, but the types of vegetations that need to be planted into the bay shore, there, I believe, is a restoration, but I'm going to let Mr. Adkins speak to that. He can speak more clearly to that.
Thank you.
So the restoration plan.
Mr. Lovell.
I'm sorry, Dave Lovell, so the restoration plan there's not been any work done on that, is that what I'm hearing?
Not the actual planting, no. The property remains in violation simply because it's not been planted yet.
Anyone else? Gentlemen online? Okay. Then, Mr. Adkins, would you talk to us, please? Yeah. Were you sworn in, Mr. Adkins? Were you here? Yeah.
Can we both go up there or just one at a time?
I apologize. I'm trying to understand procedure.
Yeah, me too. Why don't you talk to us first, and then,
Okay.
are you two together?
Yes. Matt pretty much takes care of paperwork and does stuff for me, so he can probably fill in some of the gaps, but I was going to speak on that as well. This is Matt Simpson. I'm Don Adkins.
Why don't you start, and then we'll let him.
Sure.
Go
Because
ahead.
he's the one that sent a lot of emails and has documentation, so I brought him here with me as well.
Okay, well, I don't care who talks to us, but we want to hear your side of this.
Okay. First of all, we submitted the restoration plan that we were asked to do on the 18th. It was submitted on the 18th. I don't know if it was the document.
18th of,
February, pardon me. So we came into compliance with that. A few days later, I was notified that we still needed to pay the $1,000 fine with the plan. In the meantime, but I'm going to take you back to January real quick, because our meeting was, I think, December the 19th. In January, I had purchased the property, and as a matter of fact, Mr. Stein, I think you personally asked me in the meeting, said, do you have any proof of it? Because I was saying that we didn't clear this property, and you asked me if I had any proof, and I did not. January the 8th, and I have it on my phone where it was emailed to me, I got pictures. John Martin, who I bought the property from, came into my office, and he provided me with these pictures that were on his phone showing where the property had already been cleared. I bought the property like March or May of 2018. These pictures he already had on his phone. So once I had these pictures, I started reaching out to the planning department because I wanted to show them to Mr. Carpenter. We finally, after a couple of, I think it took us about 3 weeks, we got a meeting together. So we came in with the pictures and we showed him the pictures like, hey, here's our pictures as compared to your pictures, and all the trees are still there. The only thing that's different is these leaves that you're seeing right here because of the equipment that we took into the property had disturbed the leaves.
you're saying, what's the date of those pictures? What you have in your hand?
The date that they were taken were 2/28/2018.
And you're saying as of 2/28/18, the
This
land.
property was already cleared, yes, sir. I can bring these up to you guys and show you. And I showed that to Mr. Carpenter, and he told us that he would review the project. And that's the reason we didn't pay. The only thing we had not done is paid the $1,000 fine. We submitted the restoration plan in the time frame we were given. We got that done. In the meantime, it was also brought up to me that we didn't have to do the restoration if we submitted for a building permit. And I mentioned to you guys, we were starting from scratch, but you gave me 60 days, but I was under the gun to get plans done, civil done, engineering done. And I brought also to the meeting what all we've gotten done so far. But in the midst of everything, we did have to deal with businesses being shut down and the inability to get things. But we actually got the civil plan done. for a new house to be built. And this is the reason the restoration didn't start, because it's my understanding we don't have to do the restoration if we're submitting for a building plan. So we've been working on that. We got everything done, but the engineered plan's back. So I can't submit for my building permits, but I can't make the engineer get them back to me any faster. We call daily. I've been in touch multiple times with Officer Lynch and let him know, and he even told me, he said, come to the meeting and at least bring to the board to show that we have been working on this the entire time. But in the meantime, there's two things going on here. We had shown Mr. Lynch the pictures that, in essence, we hadn't even done what we were being charged to do, and I was appealing the $1,000. He told us he would review it. They did go out there maybe 3 or 4 days later. I don't have the exact timeline. He and some people from his office, and I think Mr. Lynch went with them, and then we were notified back that they concurred that we didn't disturb that area, but we disturbed 20% of it from the clearing of the lot next door, which is our new home that we're building. So what we were originally accused of doing wasn't done with that, but then the new accusation is that we did it with the clearing of that lot. And so the $1,000 stood. I reached out to Stan Sunday because there was no, by now there's no meetings. I was planning on coming to the board to bring this up in March, but there's the meetings, so I didn't have anybody else to talk to. So I reached out to Stan Sunday to show him all of my information. He reviewed it. He got back to me within about a week, and this was about 2 weeks into the lockdown happening. I could get exact dates, but I remember the time frame because when we originally met, they had it was like Tuesday before everything went into total lockdown. And he got back with me the next week. He said, I've spoken with Mac, and I still need you to pay the $1,000 fine, which we did immediately, and that was the 25th of March. So the only reason the fine wasn't paid is I was trying to show the evidence that I had to someone. There was no board meeting to come to show that we didn't even believe, we did the restoration plan, but we didn't think the fine was fair because we didn't do what we're being told to do.
Let me interrupt you. What was this $1,000 fine? Was that something we imposed?
Well, in my opinion, to be quite honest with you, I wasn't clear on it because when I got through presenting that day, Matt Carpenter came up and he instigated that he wanted to accelerate the fine and use his maximum. And I didn't even understand that it was voted on, to be honest with you. I left here not knowing that it was clear.
Could I interrupt you long enough to let Mr. Carpenter tell me what this $1,000 fine? Can't do that?
Yeah, no, you can. It has nothing to do with us. This is Max, his department. Go ahead.
Sure.
Okay.
The fine, it was not a fine. The penalty that was imposed was imposed on the restoration permit application for clearing without permits. The director has the authority to require multiple application fees for failure to get a permit prior to development
So it was
activities.
a penalty, not a fine.
It's a penalty. Yes, sir. It has nothing to do with code enforcement. It has everything to do with development without permits and the cost of getting a permit to remedy that.
And you have the right to do that without our
Plan development.
agreement, yes. Okay. Mr. Adkins, sorry.
But the debate here is that I came to him showing him that we didn't clear. We were trying to find our property line, and that's where this debate started. But I didn't clear this property. This is the property, what it looked like in 2018. And this is the picture from the case study that was brought here. And like I said, the thing that's different is there's no leaves on the dirt. But if you look, the same trees are still there.
Can I accept these and take a look? Can I accept them into evidence?
Absolutely. We brought
Let me see, yeah.
This is what was presented that night I was here.
Right.
The pictures. These are the pictures that John Martin gave me that were dated from 2/28. And if you look at them, the trees themselves and the strip down the middle, all the way down to the water, those two trees are still even in the back of the property. The two that are
This tree
standing
here and this tree here.
like these two, this is the coastline here.
Right.
That was where they were long
Got-
before I bought
gotcha.
the property.
This
They're still
tree
there.
here and
What
this-
you're seeing though, this is just the
This stuff
disturbance
to
of
the
the
side.
land is basically where the tractors ran over, and we were trying to clear out the property line against Mr. Osborne's property because we could not even tell. I wanted to put up a fence.
Sir.
And we couldn't, I'm sorry.
Careful.
Whoa.
Sorry, that wouldn't have been.
I was a little late warning you.
But all of that was in this debate process, and I had no one to talk to.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah. All right, are we
But
back?
we did get our restoration plan submitted before that penalty, before that cutoff date. I was debating this fine, whatever you want to call it, of $1,000.
Okay, well,
Because we were saying we didn't clear without a permit.
clearly that one's not in our purview, so we'll forget about that one. But the $4,250 is what we're going to consider here tonight.
Tom, I have a question if I can.
Yeah.
Victor Bowman, question, if the clearing was done in 2018, then it seems to me like a lot of growth and stuff would have come up until December of 19. So why is the property scraped like it is on the photographs? There should have been a lot of growth coming up.
That's the property when I bought it. No, what you're seeing on the picture was basically the equipment that I came in that was clearing the property line. There was basically roots left in the property and stumps. That's all there was there. But the clearing of the property was done long before I purchased it, and I didn't know anything about it or have anything to do with it.
You bought the property though, didn't you? You didn't
Yes,
look
sir.
at the property before you bought it?
No, the fact that there was something there or not something there, I didn't know what was there before I bought it because it was just leaves on the ground, just like the picture that you saw. It looked like that when I bought it.
But you're saying that beneath those leaves were the stumps from when it had previously been cleared?
That's what came up when the equipment was going over it. Yes, sir.
Well,
So stumps and
wait a minute.
roots.
How did you discover them if you didn't dig?
We didn't dig. That was the only reason they came up is there was basically roots in the property that were left there.
Well,
But we didn't clear the property. But either way, I didn't have anyone to get in touch with, and I was trying to reach out all the way down to Mr. Sunday, and we were caught in the middle of and we did meet in this, and when he determined you need to pay this fine, I paid it immediately. But I argued that I submitted our paperwork on time. I was just trying to meet with someone to debate the $1,000 fine.
Okay.
Freeport looks to me like it'd be the guy you bought it from. If he cleared it and caused you the problem, you need to go back to him to straighten the situation out. I mean, that's between you and him.
But this situation was about putting the restoration plan in place, and we did. We submitted that. The only thing I haven't been able to do, and I paid the $1,000 fine, even though I debated it, I paid the $1,000. The only thing we haven't been able to do is get final building permits that we can submit for planning, and that's out of my hands. I can't get them any faster. And I mentioned that to you guys when I was here. We were at the beginning in December
understand that part
of
of it.
starting to design a house, to draw the plans, to get the civils, to get it ready, and I couldn't move it any quicker. That's the only thing that I haven't been able to control, but I did everything else.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Adkins?
Yes, I have one, please,
Yes,
Tom. Victor
Mr.
Bowman,
Yeah.
when did you start the design process for the house for this lot?
In January, right after, when we left here, we were headed into Christmas. It was December 19th. People
May
had
I ask
basically,
which engineer you're using, please?
West Area Engineering. Yes, sir.
Who's doing the
As a
engineering?
matter of fact, I can show, they're doing the engineering also, and the civil has already been done. We got the foundation back, so we were able to go ahead and start the civil, but the rest of the engineering, in other words, we had a site, we had a floor plan. And we were able to begin the civil side of it so that we could have the house plan done, but I don't have all the engineering, the structural is what I'm trying to say, with all the mechanical and everything. I don't have it back yet. And in that, I think, is it that piece he has, or right here? I can show you how far we've gotten with it. I just don't have it all back yet. I've got the plans done here. I just don't have a permittable set, if you will, that I can actually, I've got this part done, I've got the house done.
And
the
this was
design
started in January? Okay,
And we
thank you.
went into a COVID situation, and I've been in a, so all I'm waiting on is the final plans that I can submit for permitting.
Okay, any other questions from Mr. Adkins?
And it's my understanding that I don't have to do the restoration until we get the house built, because that was the way we understood it. So that's the only reason we haven't started the restoration, which I believe is the situation with the $250 fine now. Is that correct? If that's what I think I understand.
The alleged violation, is that of clearing without a permit? Is that right? Is that what the fine's been levied for?
Yes, sir, and I'll try to clarify that a little bit. The building permit would have satisfied the clearing of the rest of the lot. It was later determined after speaking with Mr. Adkins, and I think Mr. Craker, who is our environmental specialist, Mr. Craker looked at the area of the Bayshore Protection Zone and determined that what he could see, only about 20% was impacted at some point in recent time. So that was all that was being required to restore of the bayshore protection. We still have the remainder of the lot, and when the building permit is issued, that will satisfy that portion. The restoration can be submitted and taken care of and incorporated so that prior to the certificate of occupancy, that planting has to be done.
I got you.
Okay, and
Mr.
then,
Lin-
so from a standpoint of, and I'm not debating here, but if it's about the 20% in the coastal part, all it was ever done was mowed trying to find the property line. So all of that's even grown back. So I'm glad to plant whatever, but it's exactly the way it was before all this started right now.
Okay. Dave, you were going to say something?
I forgot.
No, but
I'm sorry, it's,
I'll make a comment if I can. Victor Bowman?
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and restore the Bay Protection Zone?
that's what I'm talking about. The Bay Protection Zone.
Nothing to do with the permit, has nothing to do
Right,
with.
was impacted by a tractor or some equipment is what they're saying.
Answer my question.
I'm glad to. It's just been a quagmire of moving parts, and we're not trying to not
The
do
moving
anything.
part about planning the Bay Protection Zone with
If that
plants.
will remedy this, I don't have a problem. We'll do that. Sure.
Why didn't you do it before now?
I didn't understand it to be this way, to be honest with you. It's been a multiple, it's confusing. I'm sorry. It's confusing for us, but we submitted the restoration plan
Can I answer your
thinking,
question?
sure.
You want me to come up there?
Yeah, come up here and talk. Tell us who you are.
Matt Simpson. To answer your question, the conditions of approval for the restoration plan says all plantings must be installed prior to issuance of the CO or within 60 days of this approval if no building permit is issued. So the conditions of approval is the CO or no building permit.
Sir, I believe you arrived after I swore everyone in. Have you been sworn?
Yes.
Oh, you were
I was
here?
sworn in. Yes.
Okay, I
Yes.
just saw you coming in. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
So that was to answer your question.
Okay, any other questions?
But there's still no building permit.
We're trying to get there. That's what we're saying. We're trying to go that route instead of just putting it back. We're trying to get the permit and work that way, but I can't get it any faster. That's my dilemma.
You're just asking for more time, is that what it is?
Yes, sir. Sure. I mean, we're not trying to avoid any of this.
I
It's just
understand
we're
that.
caught in which path to go, and we're taking the path of getting a building permit. We just haven't been able to get the final permit.
Things have been hectic, I know. How long do you think you'd need to get it?
I would believe, do you think that we can get this within 60 days?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're waiting on three plans, a lighting plan, a foundation plan, and a roofing plan. Those are very time-consuming tasks, so.
And then you'll have a building permit to
We'll
negate the necessity of restoring whoever cleared the land, and you'll plant the 20% at the bay that needs to be planted.
Or for clarity, would that be after or before? So,
Well,
just
it
so I
sounds-
understand.
Get your CO, it'll be.
Sounds like you got till you get
At
the
the
CO.
CO, okay.
Prior
Sure.
to issue.
Mac, you got something to tell us?
Yes, sir. For clarification, this restoration plan was approved on May 7th. And as the gentleman, May 7th of 2020.
Two weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It allows for either restoration within 60 days if no permit's pulled, or restoration at the completion of the
Gotcha,
construction.
Gotcha. Okay,
But the restoration still has to occur.
I understand.
But he does have until he completes the house.
Okay. All right. Then we're going to close the public part of the hearing. And we're going to discuss it, or we're going to make a motion. Sounds a little like the last case.
Well, this is a non-compliance issue, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the question is, does the fine stand? And does the fine continue if the governor decides that the state of emergency has ended?
Well, as Gordon has said in the past, Victor Bowman, I'm sorry, as Gordon said in the past, he can always come back and ask for an abatement of the fine at some
he-
point in the future. And based on that, I'll make a recommendation. We accept the officer's recommendation.
Make a motion.
I did.
Yes, and John Harrison seconds that motion. Is there any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. Mr. Harrison, Mr. Porter, Mr. Lovell,
Yes.
Mr. Bowman,
Yes.
gentlemen online, Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
and who am I missing? Mr. Harrison?
Mr. Wilson.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Wilson, sorry.
Mr. Wilson is yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. The motion carries. you have 60 days to get a building permit.
Do I have a fine? I'm just confused.
That
I just-
$1,000 is not us, okay?
No, not that. I'm
The
talking about-
4,250, if you manage to, yeah, you have the fine at this point, just like Mr. Stratton before you. If you come back and you have the building permit, you could say to us, hey, I did what I said I'd do. Will you lower the fine, remove the fine, whatever?
Okay.
But same thing you said to him, sooner you do it, more likely we are to reduce that fine.
Tom, I'd add to that too, if the governor lifts,
Yeah, watch out.
then you're back up to $250 a day, correct?
Yeah.
Well,
But you could
I'm
argue,
confused. I got the 60 days regardless, right?
No.
Even if he lifts it tomorrow. I'm trying to understand that, that's all.
well, that's an interesting question.
No, you did not. The motion was for the officer's recommendation, which did not include a 60-day extension. So
Right.
basically, you have an extension by virtue of the governor's toll on any activity right now because of COVID. We don't know when that will end. So once that does end, the officer's recommendation, and according to the vote and the motion, your fine would start again. So you would need to keep in contact with the officer to make sure that you're in compliance, because then they can bring it back to do the same thing, either reduce the fine, set it aside, or whatever. But again, as I said, the best thing you can do is work as fast as you can.
Renee, can the office, if he goes to the officer, say the governor, say it's 30 days from now and he doesn't yet have the permit, but he's going to get it a week later, and the governor removes the state of emergency, does the code enforcement officer have the ability to? No, only we do.
The officer would then come back to us and say his recommendation would be to waive the fine.
Okay.
Yes, in that case, what we would do is bring Mr. Adkins before the board again for a fine reduction hearing,
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
whatever that might be at that time.
This is Victor Bowman, because you keep saying you're confused. You have a $4,250 fine right now. If you don't get your building permit by the time the governor removes this total, what do you call it?
The COVID.
The
stay
COVID,
on
then
everything.
it kicks into $250 a day at that point. So what we're saying is, get your building permit as quickly as possible, because you may end up with a $4,250 plus another $250 a day. Okay?
So
But-
based on what you said, though, the 60 days is irrelevant. That's the reason I was asking, because I was leaving here thinking I had 60 days to get this done. but
Well,
the
if you
60
come
days
back
doesn't
before the
matter.
board and ask us for reduction, it will be, it'd be, what we're trying to do is get you to get the permit.
Right.
Sooner
that's
you
what
get
we're
the
trying to do.
permit, sooner the fine stop. And even if it goes on, you can come back before this board and request a fine reduction. I don't know whether the board reduction, reduce it, or leave it out, but that's the best option you got right there, really. I mean, you'd be, money to head to go ahead and get the permit as quick as you could. That's what we're after. And, then, we have the ability to reduce your fine or do away with whichever one the board assumes to do. But, a lot of what our attitude is, or mine, the more compliance you do, or the faster you try to do something to help us, the more we're inclined to help you. So
Okay.
that's a good, safe way to do it, I would think. Of course, this thing may not be over for 2 months. You might have the whole thing.
Tom, can we proceed?
Yep, all right. We're going to go on to the next case, number 4. Yes, Mr. Lynch?
Board, to accommodate one of our guests and a case, we're gonna jump to case number 7, which is 19002680. This is being done to accommodate the witness who's here, the property owner.
Okay. Anna?
Good evening, board members. Anna Reichert, Code Enforcement. For the record, I'm submitting this information and
This is close to
requesting
home
to
here.
set the fines
Laird Road.
for this case. This is a case that previously came before the board. The original case was heard January the 16th, 2020, and the tenant is Marilyn Slothauer, who is to comply within 90 days, which would be April 13th,
See what it is?
2020. And the violations was sections 1.13.00, development approval, and 2.02.00B, accessory structures, and 7.02.01, junk and litter. I just wanted to go through the slides really quick from my previous presentations. We're not here to rehear it. She had an extension of, oh gosh, if you will go forward to the pictures. Originally, the structure was in the right-of-way. She moved it onto the property, but then it was no permits, junk and debris. Go forward, please. And she was given, the final order was issued 1/17/2020. She was to comply within 90 days. Reinspection this morning, she still has junk and debris. She still has no permits. And so, last slide, please. My determination, determination of fines is based on the fact she still remains non-compliant, and she is here to speak with you.
But is there a fine at this point?
No, you all recommended that she get an extension of the 60 days, I believe, and to come back, which was during the COVID. So
Well,
now,
that's an interesting question. When did we give her the 60 days, or what do we give her,
okay.
60 days or
So
90 days?
Well, the issue is that we're still under COVID at this point. in
I
time.
know, but that's to the fines, and in this case, we haven't yet fined her, right?
she is here, and she
Yeah, I
does
know,
have
but-
some other information that will affect your decision, so I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay, let's,
So her initial extension, it looks like, was until 4/13. The COVID started March 9th, so her extension was into, so
but we haven't yet made the legal determination, or the county hasn't recommended that COVID exception be pertinent to her extension.
should probably be continued.
Well, it would be a decent thing to do, but I don't know if it's a legal thing that we have to do. All right.
I think this one's premature due to, and Anna did not know this because the decision to suspend the fines was this evening, way after, so she had no way of knowing that this was coming.
Okay, so one more time, tell me the dates then.
Okay, Anna, if you could, you can.
Okay, I just wanted to say, now I forgot what I was going to say. Okay, the extension was actually 90 days from January 16th.
But we decided on March 6th, no, March 9th, that, okay. So how many days did she use up between January 16th and March 9th?
Well, that was given her an extension then. Her extension would have extended into the 90 days from January, would have been until 4/13, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So she had an extension until 4/13.
But because of the COVID emergency,
Right.
she only used up 14 and 9, 23 of the 90 days.
She hasn't used any. If March 9th started, tonight we decided.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
She has some information that will also affect this
great.
greatly.
Okay, yeah.
And she's hard of hearing, so if you would speak up.
All right.
Thank you.
On February the 19th, 2020, I was in a real bad car accident. I had a big truck with a double trailer, FedEx truck, the big one, the semi, hit me in behind. I'm lucky to be here. So I've been under doctor's care, so I wasn't able to do a lot of things like you required me to do, or otherwise it would have been done. I have another friend that's come to assist me whenever he gets a chance to do such, because he works nights. And we've got a lot done in the last couple of days because we use his car to be able to take stuff down to the junk. And we're also fixing, but between the rain and everything, to do the rest like we do, like I've done before. Still working on trying to organize things. And when I get my settlement, I have plans to clear up everything. So I'm asking a little bit more time to be able to finalize this because I go to court on June the 15th.
Okay.
And I don't know what they're gonna say or do or what they're gonna do on that point. but I can't stand too long and I can't sit too long because I feel real weak when I do, because they hit me in the head. So I have a paper here from the doctor stating everything. And I would have complied, but I just got set back a big time decade.
You certainly did.
So I don't know what to do in this situation, except I just need to go see these doctors, go to the court, and then I'll have money to do what I need to do and clear up everything and make my home a home.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
I need to give this to you.
Okay, well, I'll accept that into evidence, and I will accept Anna's
Yeah,
testimony
it'll
into,
just need to be accepted redaction for HIPAA purposes of privacy on the.
whatever you said. Yes. Okay. Mr. Rose?
We have one gentleman, Doug Permenter, who has raised his hand to speak
Online.
online.
Oh, good.
Have you,
Please proceed.
Mr.
Mr. Permenter, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Well, he's not visible, so we can't determine.
Is he the-
Is
here.
this for a public comment?
Well, I just wanted to let you know, since we were named on the notice, that I was here. We originally sold that property to her back in July of 2013 under an unrecorded contract for deed. So I think that's why the name of the company, King Lake Landing, appeared on the code enforcement notice.
Mr. Permenter,
But,
you're an attorney, correct?
I'm sorry?
You're an attorney, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so he's speaking as an officer of the court and doesn't need to be sworn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we've recorded that contract for deed, and I'd hope that would make it clear that our position was that as a mortgage holder. And we have talked with Ms. Lothauer, and she has informed us about the auto accident, and we've been trying to work with her any way we can. And I appreciate y'all working with her and would ask that you continue to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. No more questions for Mrs. Slothauer?
Yes, one question, if you don't
Yes.
mind. You said you're going to court in June.
June the 15th, and I don't know what they're gonna do because I've been summoned to go to court by them, FedEx people.
So how much time are you asking for? Like July the 1st?
I'm asking like maybe to, August. It gives me time to figure out what they're gonna do if I have to go back into court. Because sometimes they go and they give a hearing and then they don't finalize things and then they go back in. So just in case I have to go back into court again, but I'm hoping to get everything settled. So I don't know how this is all gonna fan out, and but I hope to get it what I want. And once I get what I want, I can put everything together. And that takes a while to set everything up because of this carved over virus. It's logged everything behind, and I can't. I got stuff already for the electric. I got the box. I got the outside box. All I need is an electrician to put it together. And I got that far with it. And then, but the other two things, I have to dig around and figure out who's going to do this and what they can do for me. So that takes a while to get it all set up.
This is Chairman.
And they will have their own permit, pretty much.
Are you living in the house now?
Yes and no. I live in the RV and I live in the cabin because I live in my vehicle, I live in my RV, and I live in the cabin.
What do you do for water and sewer?
I got the containers for the water.
Yeah.
And then I go up to the Dollar General, which is up the street from me, and I go to Mossy Head General, and I go down to Love's.
Okay.
So I got ways to fix it. That's where I go.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
All right.
All right. Victor's got a good idea. Is this an option? Good. Victor's suggesting that we table this until the August meeting. And that sounds like a reasonable thing to me. So I'd listen to a motion. Victor, why don't you move that?
Victor Bauman, we table this case until the August meeting of the Code
Okay,
Enforcement
and
Board.
who will second that motion?
Harrison.
What happened over there?
Don does, me and him had
Don
something.
Harrison, second.
All right, all those, oh, no, can't do that. Mr. Harrison?
Yeah.
Aye or nay?
Aye.
Mr. Porter?
Aye.
Mr. Lovell?
Aye.
Mr. Bowman? And Mr. Schneider?
Aye.
And who did I forget?
Mr. Wilson is also aye.
Okay,
Make sure she can hear.
okay. What we did was, we just made it all go away till August,
Okay.
okay?
you.
So
God
you
bless
come
all.
back in August, and hopefully by then FedEx have made you a rich woman, and we'll be okay.
Get you a good place to
I'll
live.
show you what I done.
All right, thank you.
God bless.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to do one more, and then we'll take a break. This is case number 4, right? Case 20-001111. And who's going to talk about this?
I think so.
No one.
It'll be Officer Lynch, I believe. Give us just 1 minute.
Okay.
Where are we at here? You. Good to go.
Gotta love technology.
Yes.
Good evening again. Code Enforcement Officer Mike Lynch. For the record, I'm presenting this testimony, final report, and this PowerPoint presentation. This involves case number 20-001111, parcel 2 South 19-24160-00A-0090, belonging to Benito Heriberto Hernandez. His address is 917 East Point Washington Road in Santa Rosa Beach. The land use is rural residential. The violations stated are 1.1309C, building permits required, and 5.00.03, building setback requirements. This property is situated off McDaniel's Fish Camp Road. If you go down and make a left on Palmetto, and then Magnolia is a short little street based off that. It's kind of an oblong shape. This is just an overview that shows its placement in the code violations. Building without permits, no erection or alteration or reconstruction of any building, structure shall be commenced without first obtaining a building permit from the building official. And the building setback requirements. I'm not going to go over this one because this portion has been since satisfied. They've moved the structure and it's no longer an issue. Back on February 12th of this year, a complaint was received in regards to a building being built within the setbacks and built without permits. An inspection on this date shows that a large structure that may be a 3-car garage, approximately 38 feet by 23 feet, with the back of the structure approximately 6.5 feet from the rear property line. A second structure, approximately 16 by 20 foot shed, was found to be approximately 2.5 feet from the side property line and approximately 6 feet from the rear property. So these are the setback issues and the proximity. And I then made contact with a resident who was speaking to the property owner, Mr. Benito Hernandez, and she handed the phone to me. I spoke to Mr. Hernandez and advised him that he had constructed his buildings without any building permits and that they were within the rear and side setbacks. I advised that I was issuing a stop work order and that no other activity could take place until he obtained his permits. I then prepared and sent a notice of violation and notice of hearing to the property owner via certified mail with return receipt. The reason that I had submitted a notice of violation and a notice of hearing at the same time is because this wasn't the first time I'd been at Mr. Hernandez's property for a similar issue. On February 25th of this year, I posted the notice of violation and notice of hearing to the post on the prohibited structure. I also noted that the stop work order that I had posted on the same post had been removed. On February 25th, the property owner and an interpreter came into the office with notices that were posted to see what was required. So that same time frame, they had taken the postings that I put up and brought them into the office, including the stop work order. They needed that explained. I told him that he would need to submit his application through the planning and development, but the structures could not be in the setbacks. I provided the property owner with a drawing of his parcels showing the setbacks. The property owner's interpreter advised that he understood and explained it to the property owner. He was also assisted by a planner, Donise Way, who provided him a copy of the foundation survey, which showed the setbacks and locations. I advised that this case would still be presented to the March 19th, 2020 Code Enforcement Board. On February 26th, I received a return notice of violation, notice of hearing that was sent to the subject property, addressed and shown unclaimed and unable to forward. On March 3rd of this year, I inspected and there was no change in condition. An inspection of March 13th of this year showed that the buildings had been removed from the setbacks. These buildings were essentially on pilings, and so that they were easily moved. And all he did was brought in a big skidder, lifted up the building, and removed it from the setbacks. So at that point, those violations had been satisfied. On March 17th, I notified the property owner of the change in the date for the Code Enforcement Board hearing. On March 19th, I sent a new notice of hearing to the property owner via certified mail. On March 24th, the property owner submitted plans for the garage through the planning department, and this was BPR 20-000581. On May 5th of this year, I contacted a friend of the property owner to advise him that his application was still not complete, that they were still scheduled for the hearing, and I mailed a new notice of hearing with the COVID advisory via certified mail. On May 12th of this year, I received the return unsigned notice of hearing, and as of today's date, no building permits have been issued. I don't know what it is about Mr. Hernandez, but he doesn't like to accept certified mail. I have a whole stack. He just doesn't sign for anything. That's why I end up posting everything. These were the property conditions on February 12th. The large structure on the right, it looks like 3 ports. That's why I thought it may have been a garage. And then the building to the left was that 16 by 20 shed or storage building. The building department really wasn't requiring, because of its square footage and being north of the bay, they weren't requiring a building permit for that structure, but for the larger structure. This photo just shows the proximity to the back property line. It was within 6.5 feet. This was the stop work order that I posted on one of the upright posts. This was the notice of violation that was posted and sent to the property owner. The notice of hearing that was sent. These were the mailings. And this was the tracking. When I don't get the green cards back, I go through the Postal Service and try to find out where it's at. And then I went back and reposted the notice of violation and notice of hearings. This was the latest notice of hearing, rescheduled because of the COVID-19 precautions, all of which came back, returned to me. My recommendation is I ask that you please find, I'm going to move this forward so I can see.
I'll see how you're doing it anyway.
My bifocals aren't cutting it. Okay, I'm sorry. I'd ask that you please find that 55 North Magnolia Court, Freeport, Parcel 2, 2 South, 19, 2416000A0090 is located within the unincorporated areas of Walton County and is subject to Chapter 7 of the Walton County Land Development Code. I'd ask that you please find the violations of Walton County Land Development Code 1.1309 does exist. That's the building permit. And please find that the proper notice of hearing was given to the respondent. I'd ask that the respondent is to correct the violation within 20 days of the date of this order, and that the respondent is further ordered to contact the Walton County Code Enforcement Department to arrange for a reinspection of the subject property to verify compliance with this order. And finally, that if the respondent fails to comply with the above actions or fails to bring the property into compliance with the applicable codes, ordinances, and regulations according to this order, the board assesses a fine of $150 a day until the property is brought into compliance. At this time, I would ask that the board accept my testimony, presentation, and final summary report into the record.
I do accept it into the record. Does anyone have questions for Mr. Lynch?
When does
Victor Bowman have one. You said he picked up the structure and moved it off the piles? I mean, are they literally piles or just block stacks?
I think they may be actually attached to the structure to where, but he can get underneath and move it.
Okay, so the piles came with it, or whatever you, okay.
I think so.
Foundation, whatever they are, okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
When does the fine start?
20 days.
20 days.
From
And
today?
yes, sir, from the date of today. And the reason that I went with that is Mr. Hernandez has been working slowly to get his permits, but this has drug on, and I've dealt with this, and so I would just like to get some resolution. He should be able to get his permits within that time period.
Okay.
And I
Thank you.
don't believe Mr. Hernandez is here tonight.
Is Mr. Hernandez here? Does anyone want to speak for Mr. Hernandez? Okay. Then, gentlemen, any comments? I'll close the public part of the hearing. Any public comment? Okay. Make a motion.
Accept Officer Lynch's recommendation.
Okay.
John Harrison, I recommend we accept Officer Lynch's recommendation.
I'll second it.
Okay. Okay, let's start the other way. Victor?
Aye.
Dave?
Yes.
Martin?
Yeah, Harrison, yes.
And Mr., who's still on, Jack Wilson or Mr. Schneider? Both gentlemen? Yes,
Both-
I see
both
yes.
gentlemen,
I see both men
yes.
signaling yes. Okay, so the motion carries. Thank you. Do you want to take a break? Yes.
Water.
One point of issue, we had a request, we have a citizen with a disability whose case number 8 is a fine reduction. They'd like to try to get it in before the break so that they could.
All
leave.
right, we'll listen to that one. Case 19-002693.
Correct. Anna, you'll have to give me just a second to get your
Okay.
cases up.
Thank you. This is case 19-2693. Oh, I'm
He's
Anna
got a,
Reichert, Code Officer for Walton County. This is basically a request for a reduction in fines. The original case was heard September the 19th of 2019. It required compliance by October 19th of 2019. The fines accrued from March 18th, fines accrued from October the 19th through March 18th. And the date of, total amount of fines is $15,100. And I just wanted to basically show, this is the original condition, and if you'll go to the very end, they have done a thorough job of cleaning, and so I'll let them request the fine.
One question, Anna, is the 15,000, you said till March 19th, is that inclusive of taking the 10 days off? After
No, it's
tonight?
not. I calculated this before we got that information.
That amount would need to be
reduced by $2,500.
Thank you.
Anna, Victor Bowman, Anna, are you saying that the property is completely cleaned up now?
Yes, sir. They've done a good job.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, would you tell us who you are
The property at 496 Black Creek Lodge Road.
and your name, sir? I didn't.
David Boyd.
Okay.
When this had all happened, I tried to get people out there to try to get it done and this and that, and I wasn't getting it done right and in time or anything like that, sir, and everybody. And my mother had passed earlier the year right before that. I've been still in grievance of it. I know it's not a reason for this, but my brother and my sister were going to try to help me get it cleaned up. It was all my stuff that was on that property, and I didn't have a good communication with them. Everything what was going on, my brother was still working, and my sister doesn't live in the state here. But we're just hoping that it's all done now, and that, sorry that it took so long. I don't know what to ask except thank y'all for, I mean, hopefully we can, maybe this can be reduced or something. So I'm under disability. I only get so much a month, and it's $725. My brother talk to her or anything? Is that all right?
Your brother's here now?
Yes.
Yeah, if he'd like to speak, that's fine.
One who did most of the cleaning and stuff, and
Was this your property or your mom?
it was my mother's, and she passed away. It's under probate still, the property is. My mother's death and everything, it's all under probate still.
Was she alive when the complaint was filed?
No, sir.
Okay. If your brother wants to come up, that's fine.
I thank you for letting me talk. I'm Larry Boyd.
Okay.
Okay. I didn't know anything about that. There was a violation going on. And originally, David was going to end up living out there. And that's why his stuff was out there. And somewhere probably November, I just drove out there, and I saw the sign on the door, and I read it, and I go, oh my God, what's going on? Well, that's when I got involved trying to help clean it up, because he can't do anything. I mean, literally, he is bad. So at February, I was able to take off work. Then I stayed on it until we got it cleaned, and I hired someone to help us and all that. Property by the will and stuff is going to my sister and I. And like I say, we didn't know that there was anything happening. And I knew that there was stuff out there, but it was his stuff, and he, like I say, was going to live there. So that's where we stand on that. We're just asking if you guys would consider a good reduction in it or waive it in any way. We would highly appreciate it, but it is clean, and we plan on keeping it clean, my sister and I.
When did you have it cleaned? What was the?
We finished it, I think in February.
Okay.
Or wait, when was it?
What's your first name? David?
No.
Once David got involved, it didn't take long for them to clean it up. They actually came in compliance on March 18th.
He's Larry.
I'm
I got
sorry.
Yeah.
Once Larry got involved.
Okay.
March what? I'm sorry, Anna.
March 18th.
Okay. Anybody have questions?
Yeah, Victor Bowman, please. What do you plan to do with the property?
We're going to live on it, either my sister or I. I plan on living out there. I love it. It's off of Black Creek, just right down the road.
Dave, you had something?
I was trying to catch Anna before she sat back down. I'd just like to ask Anna or anyone from code enforcement or planning that's been closer to this whole process than we have, a recommendation on, with interaction with the respondent as to whether we should consider a fine abatement.
Larry?
That's David.
David, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I can't keep this straight.
Maybe
I didn't get much response from David. But once Larry got involved, it went very, very quickly. I didn't see much improvement, but again, I did not know if it's handicapped. I didn't know any of those conditions at all, so.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, on the same street, there's still, I mean, a lot of other houses, of course, someone has to turn them in for you guys to get involved, which is the last thing I want to do, but I mean, at the time, of course, you said, well, what about all these? But
We hear that one all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we just highly appreciate anything you guys could help us with.
Okay.
He's the one gonna pay for it, and he doesn't have money.
Yeah, he's got no money.
Right, because it's his stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff.
Yep. Okay, the public part of the hearing is closed. I take both sides' evidence and testimony, into evidence, presentation into evidence. And now, anybody got a comment? A suggestion? $12,600. That's $725 a month.
I wouldn't be opposed to,
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed to doing away with it.
Gordon and I are Democrats.
That's what I'd do.
I don't know that we.
Cleaned it up.
Yeah, he claimed, done a good job.
I don't know.
Back to the cost to the county, though.
Gentlemen, if I could remind you to please speak into your microphone so everyone can hear you.
Would y'all have any objection to us,
That's Gordon Porter.
Gordon Porter, would you have any objection to us waiving it? Or as code enforcement officers? I make a motion we waive it.
I'll second it, John Harrison.
Okay. Any discussion of the motion? Fellows online? Nope. All right, then we'll call the roll. Why don't we start with you two online? Mr. Wilson? You see
Mr.
him?
Wilson, you're going to need to unmute your phone. It's muted for some reason on your Zoom.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Mr. Schneider? Aye. Mr. Harrison? Gordon? Dave?
No.
Victor?
No.
So where do we stand now? We've got 4 ayes
You didn't vote.
and 2 noes. I don't have to vote.
Carries.
It carries. The motion carries. Okay. The fine is forgiven.
Your lucky day, gentlemen.
Yep. Okay, we are going to take a break. It'll be a quick break because we'd sure like to get out of here tonight.